Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast brought to you by the last man standing with loserpool.com. On today's edition, we're looking ahead to that big clash at Bramall Lane on Monday night. It's Sheffield United versus Arsenal. Hello. Good morning. It's Saturday, and that means football is back. The Premier League is back. Unfortunately, we have to wait until Monday night, but I'm sure we can survive lots of sporting action to delve into over the weekend ahead of our game up at Bramall Lane. Of course, England progressing to the semi-finals of the Rugby World Cup, which is good news for many. So, got up early and watched that this morning. But let's look ahead to that game at Bramall Lane. That's what we're here to do. Don't forget, this podcast is sponsored by the last man standing with loserpool.com. And as ever, I am your host, Harry Symeou. So on today's edition, we'll be looking ahead to that game. We'll be talking you through what we can expect from Sheffield United. We'll be looking at Arsenal's potential lineup, what I would go with, and I'll be taking some of your comments from the live chat. We'll also finish it off with a cheeky prediction. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening via the audio, please don't forget to leave us a review. We appreciate all your fantastic support. Right, let's begin by having a look at some statistics between the two clubs. We're going to look at some historical Premier League meetings between the two. And if I just share my screen for those of you who are watching us on YouTube at the moment or watching us back later on, here it is. Here's Arsenal and Sheffield United's head-to-head record in the Premier League. Now, they've only played 6 times in the Premier League. Sheffield United, of course, have been away from the top flight for quite some time. When Chris Wilder took over, they were in League One, struggling. Now they're in the Premier League, putting their minds against some of the Premier League's top sides. They gave Chelsea a really difficult game at Stamford Bridge where they came back from 2 goals down for a draw. They also put in a really positive performance against Liverpool at Bramall Lane just a couple of weeks ago. So that shows you that this Sheffield United side are here to compete. They mean business, and I personally expect them to stay in the Premier League come the end of the season. I don't think they'll go down. I think based on what we've seen so far in the first 8 games or so, they look a really strong side. But interestingly, when you look at the head-to-head, 6 games between the two sides, Sheffield United have won once, and that was at Bramall Lane. Arsenal have won twice, and that was at Arsenal both times. Now, there's been 3 draws, which is quite interesting because when you think about how superior Arsenal have been in terms of their league positions to Sheffield United over the years, and you know the 2 fortunes of the clubs, it's quite odd, in my opinion, that Arsenal have only managed to win twice out of the 6 fixtures. So what does that tell us? It tells us that Sheffield United traditionally give us quite a difficult time. If we look at the previous meetings, we lost at Bramall Lane in December 2006. That's how far back you have to go for the last Premier League meeting between these two sides. That same season, we beat them 3-0 at it would have been the Emirates by then. Then you look at Sheffield United 1, Arsenal 1, Bramall Lane, another Monday night game. That was 1994. That same season, Arsenal won 3-0 at home. And before that, it was 1993. So those are the last fixtures between the two clubs in the Premier League. So as we've already said, Arsenal have won 2, Sheffield United have won 1, and there's been 3 draws. Now, Bramall Lane isn't the nicest of places to go on a Monday night. I don't think that's any secret. It's not the kind of place you look forward to going. Unai Emery's already mentioned, hasn't he, in his press conference, that we're going to go there. We're going to play in the rain. It's going to be difficult. And you know that the Bramall Lane crowd will be behind them. So it's by no means going to be an easy game. Let's look at the form guides between the two sides, starting with Arsenal. If you look over our form, there was the 2-2 draw at home to Spurs. We then drew 2-2 at Watford. We've since beaten Villa at the Emirates, drawn at Old Trafford and beaten Bournemouth. So, you know, undefeated in the last 5, which is a positive, but there's 3 draws in there. In my opinion, you know, Yeah, the Spurs draw, we were 2 goals down, so you'll take that. But Watford and Manchester United, we should have got more out of those 2 games, in my personal opinion. But that's our last 5. That's our form at the moment. Sheffield United, as I mentioned, they got that draw at Stamford Bridge, but since then it's been a mixed bag. They lost at home to Southampton by 1-0. They beat Everton away, which was a very, very positive result. But Everton are having a difficult time under Marco Silva at the moment. They lost at home to Liverpool by 1-0. That was very, very unfortunate in my opinion. And they drew away at Watford, who are struggling this season. So I think Sheffield United, whilst they probably won't say it, it's an away point. I think they would have been quietly disappointed with that result. If we look at the seasons so far, Sheffield United currently sit in 13th. Arsenal sit in 3rd, which is positive. And I know there's been like a mixed bag about that in recent weeks. You know, some of us have been saying it's not a true reflection of where we are as a team. And to a degree, I stick to that point, but we are 3rd and we should be proud of that at the minute. We've won 4 of our 8 games, drawn 3, lost 1. Sheffield United have won 2, drawn 3 and lost 3. Average goals scored per match, Arsenal 1.63, Sheffield United less than 1 a game. So that is a concern for them. I don't think they've really established who their main centre forward is going to be this season. So it'll be interesting to see who Chris Wilder goes with on Monday night, of course. In terms of clean sheets, Sheffield United have actually kept more than us. They've kept 3. Arsenal have kept 2. On average, we're creating 1.75 clear chances per game. Sheffield United is 1.25. Their biggest win was away at Everton by 2-0, as was that 3-2 victory over Aston Villa at home. Arsenal yet to win a game this season by more than 1 goal, which is quite interesting. Worst defeat, they lost at home to Leicester by 2-1, as was, of course, at Anfield, where we were beaten by 3-1. Now, if you look at the top player stats amongst the 2 sides, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang leads the way in goals. He's got 7 so far. Lacazette on 2. Callum Chambers will be joint 3rd with a few others there. In terms of assists, Dani Ceballos on 2. Ainsley Maitland-Niles is on 2, as is Nicola Pepe. Passes completed, Matteo Guendouzi, 460. Granit Xhaka is in 3rd, 449, and Oliver Norwood is sandwiched in between there with 453. Oliver Norwood, though, leads the way in tackles. And if you look at the tackle statistics, it's all Sheffield United players, the top 3 there. Norwood, Stevens, and Chris Basham lead the way there. What can we expect from this Sheffield United side? Well, that's a question I've been asked a few times over the past few days. And what I can say about Sheffield United is that they're a very committed, hard-working and organised side. And Chris Wilder is like a throwback to that old school English manager. And people talk about him being very old-fashioned. And he is in some ways, but he's also very innovative in the way he sets up his side. And he's applied something slightly different to what we're used to. And I think it's worth pointing out. Although Sheffield United play with this 3-5-2, there is an emphasis on the centre-backs. Get this, not the wing-backs, the centre-backs, causing problems with overlapping runs on the outside, with the midfielders dropping back and slotting into those positions. So that is something Arsenal need to be aware of. It's all good concentrating on the wing-backs and isolating them out of the game. But with Chris Wilder's side, there is a lot more to it. There is a lot more flexibility and sophistication in his system. So Arsenal will need to watch out for that. That 3-5-2 gives them a really, really solid core, which makes them difficult to break down. And you can see that by the fact they've kept 3 clean sheets this season. So that is, something to watch out for. I think Sheffield United's problems are probably at the other end in terms of scoring goals, but we know Arsenal's defence has been far from watertight. Be interesting to see who Unai Emery goes with and whether that makes much difference. But, they'll fancy their chances at Bramall Lane, and Arsenal need to go there, in my opinion, and be at it from the first minute. I'm going up to Bramall Lane on Monday, so hopefully I get to see and speak to some of you up there. If you do see me, come and say hello. You guys see my face every week. I don't always see yours. So I may not recognize some people. So please do come over and say hello. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really difficult game. It's a long old trip. I've chosen to stay there on Monday night because I don't fancy the drive back. So we're going to stay up there. But yeah, we'll be bringing you some content from Bramall Lane directly after the game. Probably bring you the podcast the next day, the full version. So stay tuned for that too. But let me know how you think this one's going to go. Let me know your predictions. I'm going to run through my starting lineup now, and then I'll come back to my prediction and incorporate that with some of yours. Let's have a look at some of your live comments. Kathy Bailey says, morning, Harry. Hope you're well. Hi, Kathy. Hope you're good too. Jolly says, good morning, Harry. Morning, mate. Tony says, Galimera, Harry. How you doing, mate? Kathy says, was interesting to hear your Ozil dissection the other day, Harry. Guys, if you haven't already checked that out, check out the last episode of the podcast where it starts as a dissection of a situation, turns into a little bit of a rant on the Mesut Ozil situation, reflecting on his interview that he gave to David Ornstein and sharing my opinion. You may not agree, you may disagree. That's absolutely fine. But I hope that I put my points across in a strong way, and be interesting to hear your guys' thoughts on that. So if you haven't already checked that one out, please do head over and check it out. Right, it's time to share my starting lineup for the game at Bramall Lane on Monday night. As I've said, I think it's going to be a really, really difficult game. It's certainly not going to be easy. I expect Sheffield United to be committed, give us a real tough time. But I think if you look at Arsenal's team on paper, we should have enough. We should have enough quality to overcome them. And, you know, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's the type of game that traditionally Arsenal have struggled in. Nobody really fancies going to Bramall Lane on a Monday night. Their fans will be relishing that under the lights, probably wet and windy conditions, I'd imagine, based on the weather that we've seen in the last few days. So it's not going to be easy by any means. But let's go into the formation and the lineup that I would go with. So I'm going to go with Bernd Leno in goal. No surprises there. I'm going to go with a back four. My right back is going to be Chambers. Now, that's because I don't think Bellerin is quite up to scratch yet in terms of his fitness. It's not a reflection of me feeling that Chambers is a better right back. I don't think that at all, but I just think Callum Chambers has been on good form and deserves his place in the side. And until Bellerin is 100% fit, it makes the most sense. Rob Holding will come into the team for me at centre-back alongside David Luiz. I've got a bee in my bonnet about Socrates so far this season. I think he's been poor. I think lots of people have given him a free ride because he does show that passion, because he does fist pump, etc., etc. You know, I think he's an okay defender, but I think he's been out of form lately. He's been exposed by other weaknesses in our team. And I just think that if you're adamant on playing out from the back, which as we've seen Unai Emery is, and he wants that to be a thing, then I think Luiz and Holding is the right combination. At left back, I'm going with Kieran Tierney. I bring him into the side. I think he's ready now. I think we've seen glimpses in the Europa League and various other cup competitions and stuff that he's been involved in, that he can offer a lot going forward in terms of the final ball. I think he's a lot better in his delivery than Sead Kolasinac, who I actually thought played okay against Bournemouth the other week. I don't think he was the worst player. So it's not a reflection of him being poor. I just think that Kieran Tierney is better, and I think he's ready. And we spent a lot of money on him, and now it's time to get him into that side and start nailing down that position and making it his own. So I want to see Kieran Tierney in at left back. In the midfield, I'm going with Granit Xhaka. Again, this will divide opinion, but he is the club captain, and I don't think, as I've said repeatedly, he's as bad as other people make out. I think if he plays as part of a double pivot, then it's okay. Lots of people have been calling for Lucas Torreira to come into the side, and normally I'd agree with that. But based on current form, I think it's got to be Matteo Guendouzi. I think he's been really, really good in recent weeks. And, you know, if you'd have asked me this at the start of the season, I would have told you Xhaka and Torreira is my two. But I think Guendouzi's form warrants him being in the side. I think that Dani Ceballos should play. You know, I went on and on and on about this Ozil thing the other day and how he deserves a place in the side. And in my opinion, that's true. But is Bramall Lane the place to throw him in from the beginning? And people will say, well, if he can't play at Bramall Lane, what's the point in having him? What's the point in paying that sort of money? I just think that he's been out for a while. He's not match sharp. but he would definitely 100% be in the squad for me, Mesut Ozil, and he's definitely a good option. Maybe we could incorporate him in one of those front three positions, but I don't think Unai Emery would do that. And maybe I'd like to see my fullbacks a little bit more defensive on Monday night, so I probably wouldn't do that, because I think with Sheffield United, you got that problem of them having wing backs whose defensive responsibilities are going to be a lot less than those of our fullbacks. So you can see Wilder's wing backs pushing up to the halfway line and pinning back Tierney and Chambers. Therefore, we need something in those wide areas. So that's why I'd probably go, again, based on current form, with Saka on the left. I think, he's done really, really well. But I will say this, although I think Bukayo Saka's done pretty well, Martinelli's not far behind him. For me, Gabriel Martinelli looks the most exciting of these young players. And that's why, this one was a tough one for me, because I think it's very clear that Martinelli prefers playing from the left. He's very hardworking. He makes things happen. But I think Saka is a bit more of a traditional wide man. And I think that's why he'll probably get the nod and why I'd probably pick him. For me, I'd play Aubameyang on the right. And I'd play Alexander Lacazette through the middle. He's fit and available. Now, Unai Emery has said that he may not be ready to play 90 minutes. That's fine. I accept that. But, you're going to have Reece Nelson. You're going to have Pepe, and Martinelli in reserve. So for me, I think that's the way I'll do it. I think, interestingly, Aubameyang looks better when he plays from the right than the left. But I think the fact that Nicola Pepe's come in and wants to play on the right has probably forced Emery's hand in moving Aubameyang out onto the left-hand side when Lacazette's available and fit through the middle. But I just think if you do that, that's probably my strongest lineup based on Monday's game and what I would go with. I think Lacazette will be key in holding the ball up. I think if Aubameyang and Saka can make those runs and support him and get close to him, that'll be great. Dani Ceballos threading balls right and left will be interesting. Guendouzi, he needs to patrol this area, as does Granit Xhaka. But interestingly, I want to see Callum Chambers sit back. I want to see him covering his position. I don't want to see him doing this and forcing Guendouzi out here, because then what that does is it means Granit Xhaka has to patrol this entire area on his own. And that, for me, is where we've had problems. As good as Matteo Guendouzi has been, I feel like at times he gets drawn into pressing balls in these areas and here. And that's not quite right. There is a time and a place to press. I think you can press effectively while staying in your formation and in your shape. So I don't want to see that. I don't want to see Granit Xhaka having to cover all of this area and patrol the whole midfield. And I think, whilst he's not been perfect and there's been problems in his own individual performances, I think we often leave him exposed. So that, for me, is key. The press has to be disciplined, and those two have to make sure that together they hold that midfield. Going out there is not so much of a problem, but the minute you start going over to protect your left back, you're leaving your partner exposed in the middle of the park. If Chambers and Tierney are a little bit more conservative, Saka and Aubameyang can tuck in a little bit here when we haven't got the ball, then that's great and ready to spring out on the counter-attack when the ball does reach Alexander Lacazette. Now, is it Aubameyang's natural game? No. Is he maybe a little bit wasted? Probably, yeah. But for me, him and Lacazette are our standout players. And so you've got to find a way of getting them both in the team. It's just how I feel at the minute. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know your preferred starting lineups, etc., etc. But yeah, that's just how I'm seeing it on Monday. That's what I would go with. Do I think that's what Unai Emery will go with? I think there's a good chance that's the team he'll pick. I don't necessarily think that he'll start Lacazette, but as I said already, this is my preferred starting lineup. And, if Lacazette can only play 60 minutes and then Aubameyang has to go up there and Pepe or Nelson or Martinelli comes on, then so be it. But I'm a real believer that you should start with your best team. I'm a real believer on imposing yourself early on in a game, particularly away from home against a side like Sheffield United, whose crowd will feed on the uncertainty within the Arsenal side. Any slip up, any mistake will get them going. And it just feels like for Arsenal to have the best chance of going to Bramall Lane and getting all 3 points, we have to really impose ourselves early doors and make Sheffield United sit back and take note and say, hold on a minute, this is a really good side. We have to be careful. And I, on the one hand, people will say we're better on the counter-attack and you want them to come out. I think you will see Sheffield United come out and attack us in various points of the game because Chris Wilder has shown that his team are not afraid to do that. But equally, there's a fine line between wanting to play on the break and then just inviting pressure. Now, this is not a defense capable of inviting pressure on themselves. This is not a central defensive pairing that want to have their backs against the wall, in my opinion. Rob Holding, what I like about him is he's cool, he's calm, he's composed. What I like about David Lewis is he's very good on the ball, but he doesn't want to be receiving the ball from Bernd Leno with Sheffield United players on top of him. And, interestingly, you're going to see this time and time again. If Arsenal do try and play out from the back, you're going to see Guendouzi dropping in here to receive the ball. You're going to see Granit Xhaka dropping in here to receive the ball. But Arsenal need to be sensible in their application of that because, and I always go back to this example, but if you look at the Watford game when Socrates played that shocking pass out, and it was, of course, cut out and Watford, won the ball back and eventually scored from it. The problem was that if you freeze frame that moment and look at it again, even if that pass reached Guendouzi, he was in this type of position here on the edge of his own box with players all around him. And you don't want that. That is not ideal. I think, we've seen a little bit less of it. I think Arsenal have been a little bit more sensible about it in recent weeks. And if you cast your mind back to last season, we did the same thing. We started the season adamant we were going to play that way, and the season went on. We sort of abandoned that principle a little bit. Martinez, when he's played in the cup games, has abandoned that. When possible, he's played it short, but you can see there's a real reluctance there. Bernd Leno, not so much at the moment. But I think over the course of the season, if it continues to cost us, continues to put us in dangerous situations, I think you'll see Bernd Leno take that same approach. So that is my starting lineup for Monday night's game. Again, I want to emphasize it may not be the lineup that I necessarily believe Unai Emery is going to go with, but I've been picking those lineups, getting them pretty much right, and then people have been telling me that they'd rather hear my preferred lineup. So that's what I'm doing now. There it is. Matt Hales in the comments. He says, this is my lineup: Leno, Bellerin, Chambers, Holding, Tierney, Torreira, Willock, Ceballos, Laka, Oba, and Pepe. Interesting. So Matt has gone for Chambers in at centre-back with Bellerin starting. I'm just not sure that Bellerin is up to it physically yet. And I'm not saying that he's not a top right back. And I of course, I want to see him back in the side straight away. But I just, based on the last game I saw him, which was in the Europa League, I think it was against Standard Liège, he looked really rusty. So I'm not sure that this is the game to throw him back in. Torreira, Willock, and Ceballos. I mean, Torreira seems to be out of favour lately, and I'm not sure why, given that it was this, management team that brought Lucas Torreira in. Well, when I say this management team, I mean it was under Unai Emery that he was brought in. I think he's been asked to press when he's been in the side, press a little bit further forward. That hasn't necessarily suited him. And maybe we haven't seen the best of him, in his, start to this season in particular. But, he has a lot to offer, in my opinion, Lucas Torreira. But, if the midfield and the system and the team around these players is not set up right, then we're going to continue to struggle. So that's where I am at, looking into Sunday's game. That's where my thoughts are at the moment. But so that's it. That's my team. That's my lineup, etc., etc. My prediction, however, is going to be a 2-1 Arsenal win. Again, sticking to that narrative of us not winning a game by more than by more than one goal this season. So I'm going to stick with that. I think we will concede, but I think Arsenal will just have that extra bit of power and that goal scoring prowess. Apologies there if I said Sunday, I mean Monday. all over the place. It is Saturday morning. I got up early, watched the rugby. I'm knackered. And I'm working all weekend as well. But anyway, yeah. So that's what I want to go with. My prediction is an Arsenal 2-1 win, and we'll be back bringing you some content directly from Bramall Lane on Monday night. So please, if you haven't already, subscribe, hit the bell sign, notifications, etc., and we will get you. We'll get you involved. And we'll talk to you then. So stay tuned. More stuff coming your way. All the best, and take care. Enjoy the weekends.